Every time you turn on a light, fuel a car, or fly in a plane, you're living in the shadow of one man. John D. Rockefeller didn't just sell oil. He owned energy itself. At his peak, Standard Oil controlled over 90% of America's oil industry. No billionaire alive today, not Bezos, not Musk, not Gates, has ever come close to that level of absolute dominance. But with that power came scandal. His empire grew so vast that even the President of the United States declared war on him. And when the Supreme Court finally dragged Rockefeller into the spotlight, the entire nation watched to see. Was this man bigger than the government itself? Stay with us, because what unfolded was the most dramatic battle between private wealth and public power in American history. We're on a mission to uncover the greatest stories in American business. If you believe these stories deserve to be told, join the community by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Your support helps us tell the next chapter. John Davison Rockefeller was born in 1839 to a traveling con-man father and a devout Baptist mother. From his mother, he absorbed strict discipline. No drinking, no gambling, every cent accounted for. From his father, he inherited something else, a lesson in manipulation and deception. That tension between piety and ruthlessness would define his life. Rockefeller didn't start in oil. He started as a bookkeeper, earning just 50 cents a day. But even then, he was obsessed with precision. He kept ledgers so exact that every cent was accounted for. He once wrote, "I would rather lose the chance of a profit than risk a loss without accounting for it." When oil was discovered in Pennsylvania in 1859, America went wild. Hundreds rushed to drill. Wells gushed. Fortunes were made overnight, and just as quickly lost in bankruptcies and fires. Cleveland alone had over 30 small refineries, most of them unstable, most destined to fail. At 23, Rockefeller raised $4,000 and built his first refinery. In its first year, it was already the largest in Cleveland, but he didn't gamble on drilling. He called drilling a lottery. Instead, he focused on refining, turning chaotic black sludge into kerosene, the fuel that lit America's homes. By the end of the 1860s, his refineries were processing more than 500 barrels a day. Within 2 years, Rockefeller was earning the equivalent of $6 million a year in today's money. But scale wasn't enough. Rockefeller wanted control. He struck secret deals with the railroads, demanding rebates that slashed his shipping costs. One competitor testified later, "We paid $1 a barrel. Rockefeller paid 25 cents. How could we compete?" And when discounts weren't enough, Rockefeller turned to intimidation. He would quietly approach a rival with two options: sell out to Standard Oil or face ruin. "Do you prefer to sell out or be crushed?" became his silent ultimatum. Then came the turning point, the Cleveland Massacre of 1872. With his railroad deals locked in, Rockefeller launched a buying spree. Competitors were cornered, unable to ship at his prices. Dozens collapsed in weeks. He bought their refineries for pennies on the dollar. One newspaper called it the most audacious combination ever attempted. And by the end, Rockefeller controlled nearly every refinery in Cleveland. In just 5 years, the cautious bookkeeper had transformed into the undisputed king of oil. By the 1880s, Rockefeller's Standard Oil was more than a business. It was a machine. He controlled pipelines, tank cars, refineries, distribution networks. Nothing moved in oil without his permission. This was vertical integration at its most extreme. Every piece of the industry, from production to distribution, was under his grip. His power was built on tactics the public never saw. Secret rebates from railroads gave him an unbeatable advantage. He demanded drawbacks, a fee paid to Standard Oil every time a competitor shipped their oil. In other words, his rivals unknowingly paid him to destroy them. There were whispers of corporate spies. Competitors claimed Rockefeller had men inside their refineries, leaking production numbers straight back to Standard Oil. Others told stories of intimidation. Suppliers warned not to do business with anyone outside Rockefeller's orbit. And then there were the price wars. Standard Oil would slash kerosene prices below cost in one city until competitors collapsed, then quietly raise them again once the market was his. One small refiner later said, "It was like fighting a cobra. You never knew where the next strike would come." The public began to notice. Political cartoons showed Rockefeller as an octopus, its tentacles wrapped around Congress, the railroads, even the White House. Farmers railed against his monopoly. State legislatures tried and failed to break his grip. The real blow came from a woman with a pen. In 1904, journalist Ida Tarbell published a 19-part expose in McClure's magazine. Her father had once been crushed by Standard Oil, and she spent years digging into Rockefeller's tactics. She uncovered secret contracts, hidden deals, and backroom threats. She wrote, "Our national life is on every side, distinctly poorer, uglier, meaner for the kind of influence he exercises." Her words electrified the nation. Hundreds of thousands read her series. Rockefeller, once seen as a genius of business, was now painted as a villain. For the first time, America began to ask, how much power is too much for one man to hold? By the early 1900s, Rockefeller's empire was so vast it was bigger than most nations. Standard Oil's annual revenues dwarfed the U.S. federal budget. At its peak, the company controlled 90% of America's oil, and more than half the world's. Even Congress admitted privately that no lawmaker could challenge him alone. But one man decided to try: President Theodore Roosevelt, known as the Trust Buster. Roosevelt declared war on monopolies, saying, "The liberty of the people must be protected from the tyranny of concentrated wealth." In 1906, his Justice Department filed an antitrust suit against Standard Oil, accusing Rockefeller of crushing competition through secret rebates, intimidation, and what they called unreasonable restraint of trade. The trial was a spectacle. For 5 years, witnesses poured into courtrooms describing how Standard Oil had bled them dry. Competitors told stories of mysterious price cuts, of contracts ripped away under pressure, of entire businesses ruined overnight. Political cartoons showed Rockefeller as a giant king, seated on oil barrels, lording over judges and presidents alike. And yet Rockefeller himself was almost untouchable. By then he had officially stepped back from day-to-day management, rarely appearing in public. When subpoenaed, he dodged testimony for years, frustrating investigators. One senator raged, "Is this man greater than the government itself?" Finally, in 1911, the case reached the Supreme Court. In a landmark decision, Justice John Marshall Harlan delivered the verdict. Standard Oil was guilty of monopolistic practices and must be broken apart. Newspapers screamed the headlines, "The Great Trust is dissolved." For the first time, the most powerful corporation in America had been brought to its knees by the law. Here's the twist. This wasn't just a 1911 story. The same struggle is happening today. When Roosevelt said monopolies threaten liberty, you could almost hear the echo in Washington as regulators now take aim at Amazon, Google, and Apple. Rockefeller built pipelines to control the flow of oil. Today, Amazon controls the flow of goods. Rockefeller bought out rivals to dominate refineries. Today, Facebook buys up competitors like Instagram and WhatsApp to control your attention. And just like Standard Oil, these companies argue they bring efficiency, scale, and progress, while critics warn they strangle competition and bend democracy itself. The battle between Rockefeller and the Supreme Court wasn't just about oil, it was about whether one private empire could grow bigger than the government. And that's the same question lawmakers are asking right now about Silicon Valley. The headline celebrated his downfall. "The Great Trust is dissolved," they screamed. Editorials cheered that Rockefeller's grip on America was finally broken. But behind closed doors, he was laughing. The Supreme Court's order to dismantle Standard Oil split it into 34 companies' names we still know today: Exxon, Chevron, Mobil. Rockefeller owned shares in every single one, and when the market realized these pieces were even more valuable apart than together, those shares skyrocketed. In just 2 years, the man the government tried to humble doubled his fortune. Adjusted for today, he was worth more than $400 billion, richer than Musk, Bezos, and Gates combined. Far from defeated, Rockefeller emerged untouchable. It was the ultimate paradox. The government broke his empire to weaken him, but in the process, they made him the wealthiest man in modern history. And yet, the man himself lived like a paradox. He wore plain suits, counted every dime, and gave away nickels to children on the street. At the same time, he poured hundreds of millions into philanthropy. He built the University of Chicago, Rockefeller University, and funded medical research that wiped out diseases like yellow fever. His obituary in the New York Times put it bluntly: he was hated, feared, and admired, often in the same breath. Rockefeller's story is bigger than oil, bigger than money. If you found value in Rockefeller's story, don't just leave it here. Like this video, share it with someone who loves powerful stories, and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. More importantly, join the conversation in the comments. Tell us what lesson from Rockefeller's life struck you the most. We're building a community of people who believe these stories deserve to be told. And with your support, we'll keep uncovering the giants who shape the world we live in today.